So, factoring trinomials. So, factor just means to find the terms or numbers that multiply together to get the expression. So if you look, if I have an 8x and I ask you to factor it, what that means is what multiplied to get the 8 and what multiplied to get the x. So if you think about it, you could multiply 8 times 1, you could multiply 2 times 4. So I'm just going to say 2 times 4 give you the 8, and then one of them has to have an x because 2x times 4 would give you an 8x. So all factor means is to find what things multiplied to get that term, or to get that information. The reason we factor trinomials, so on the entry task you had x squared plus 6x plus 5. That was the answer when you multiplied it out. So then basically what you're doing is you're moving backwards from what you had. So I'm going to try to find the two things that multiplied to get that information. So I'm going to use the box. And we know that we want to find the two parentheses that multiplied to get this information. The first thing you always want to do is multiply the leading coefficient by the last term. So the first thing I want to do, if you look, the leading coefficient, remember that's the number in front of the term with the highest degree. So it's 1 times 5. So 1 times 5 equals 5. Okay, so I know it's 1 times 5. Now, if you look at this box, the reason we do this step is to find what thing, or I'm going to list the factors of that in just a second and I'll write that step out. But I'm trying to find what thing multiplied to get the last term. So we have 5. In the first box we know it's x squared. And then in these two boxes they combine to get the 6x. So we know that this information, the first part needs to go in the first box, this term needs to go in the last box, and then these two middle boxes combine to get that middle term. Okay, so then the next step you need to do is list the factors of 5, and that's from that right there. So we want to list the factors of 5 and find the ones that add to get the middle term. So I'm going to list the factors of 5. And I picked an easy one to start with just so that everything just works out a little bit easier. So the only factors of 5 are 1 times 5. Well, if you add those together, 1 plus 5 does give you 6. So then you take this information and you say that the last numbers of what multiplies have to be 1 and 5. 1 times 5 is 5. And then if you look, what multiplies to get an x squared? Well, x times x gives you an x squared. Sorry, that color doesn't really show up. Or that pencil doesn't show up. X times x. Okay? And then now we can multiply 5 times x, it's 5x, that's what goes in this box. And then 1 times x is 1x. Well, does 1x plus 5x equal 6x? Yes. So then my factors are x plus 1 and x plus 5. And those are the factors. Okay, let's do another one. So if I have 2x squared plus 13x plus 15, okay, again, the first step, multiply leading times last term. So I'm going to multiply 2 times 15. So 2 times 15 equals 30. Okay, I'm going to set up the box. Okay, 2x squared goes in the first box, 15 goes in the last box. Then I need to put 13x right there. Okay, next step, list the factors of 30. So factors of 30. Now, the way I suggest to do this, sorry, I had to find my calculator. The way I suggest to do this is take your calculator and just start off. Take 30, divide by 1. So 1 times 30 is the first set of factors. 1 times 30. Then divide by 2. 15. So 2 times 15. Then divide by 3. 3 and 10. 30 divided by 4. That's not a factor. 30 divided by 5. And then 30 divided by 6. Well, I've already listed 6 and 5 as factors, so I don't need to do any more of that. Okay, now we want to find the one that adds to get a 13x. So if I do 1 plus 30, well, that's 31, so that set is out. 2 plus 15, 2 plus 15 is 17, that one's out. 3 plus 10 is 13, so that's probably it. And we'll just check the last one. 5 plus 6 is 11, so that one's out. Okay, now you're going to take that information and place it in the boxes. So in those two middle boxes. So we have a 3x and we have a 10x. Okay, so place that information. So I just took 3x and 10x, and that's what has to be in here. Okay, now you want to look for the common factor between these. So we have 2x squared and 10x. Well, what goes into 2x and goes into 10x? Well, they're both even, and they both have an x, so it'd be 2x. So that's how you find what goes out here. 2x, and then 2x times what gives you 10x? So 2 times 5 gives you 10, and then 5x gives you the 10x. So 2 times 5 is 10, times x is 10x. Now look for the common factor here, 2x and 3x. Well, you can't multiply anything times 2 to get 3, and they both just have an x. So the common factor there is just x, and then x times what gives you 3x? It would just be 3. So then your two factors would be 2x plus 3 and x plus 5. Okay. We're going to do one more example that has negatives so that you know how to work with the negative numbers. Okay, this one was a little bit harder because it has that leading coefficient. That's what makes it harder. That's why you multiply that first and the last, because it will find those two pieces of information. Notice this one didn't have a different leading coefficient, it was just 1, so that's why it ended up being a little bit easier, but it's the same thing. Look for the common factor. That one only has x. Look for the common factor that has x. Look for the common factor, 5, and that one's just 1. Okay? Alright, last example. 4x squared plus 7x minus 2. So we have 4x squared minus 2, and those two terms add to get 7x. Okay, first step again, multiply 4 times negative 2, which is negative 8. I need the factors of negative 8. Okay, so negative 1 times 8, because a negative times a positive give you a negative. Negative 2 times 4. 3 doesn't go into 8, and then 4 is already listed. You could list the other set, negative 8 times 1 and negative 4 times 2, because it's going to depend on the sign of this. So remember, for your adding and subtracting, since this term is positive, then your bigger number has to be positive, because negative 1 plus 8 would give you a positive number. Negative 2 plus 4 would give you a positive number. So we can automatically cross those two out. Okay, now we want to look in which one adds. So negative 1 plus 8. Negative 1 plus 8. If I owe you $1 and I give you 8, I gave you 7 extra. Negative 2 plus 4 would be a positive 2. Well, that one's out. So this is what I want. So it would be negative 1x and then positive, oops, I wrote 8 and it's supposed to be 7. So it would be 7x. Okay. Oh, it is supposed to be 8. Sorry. I'm getting all mixed up. So 4x and 8x, because they combine to get 7. I'm sorry. All right. So now go ahead and find the common factors in each part. So we have, if you look, 4x squared, 8x, 4x, and 8x. So both of them have a 4x. Then 4x times what gives you 8x? 4 times 2 gives you 8x. And then look this way. 4x squared negative 1x. Well, they both have an x, that's for sure. 4 and 1, there's nothing you can multiply by, so that's it. And then x times what gives you negative 1x? Well, that would be a negative 1. I'm going to go ahead and check this one just to make sure. So 4x times x gives you 4x squared. 4x times 2 gives you 8x. X times negative 1 gives you negative 1. X, 2 times negative 1 gives you negative 2. Now, if you would have accidentally had the signs backwards, all you have to do is switch them. But here are my two factors. So it would be x plus 2 and 4x minus 1. So that is factoring. I'm going to go ahead and write out a real quick note. When you factor negative numbers, remember a positive times a negative factor negative numbers. Remember, it has to be a positive times a negative. And then the larger number has to match the sign of middle term. The reason you have to do that, remember, is because if you have more positives, your answer is going to be positive. If you have more negatives, your answer would be negative. Okay?